Welcome to another 21 Hats Dashboard, brought to you by our sponsor, The Great Game of Business. I'm Loren Feldman, and I'm here with Gene Marks. Welcome, Gene.
Hey, Loren, how are you?
I'm doing great. Great to have you here. Gene, you wrote a piece recently in which you reported that the Department of Labor's new rules governing whether a worker should be classified as an employee or as a 1099 contractor, those new rules are going to have a significant impact on businesses, including yours. Tell us, what's the change?
So it's not actually just about the change, but it's more what should employers do about it. So first of all, let's just, because I'm kind of taking a stance on this. First of all, the change, okay? If you have independent contractors, you need to be acutely aware that in March, the rule for classifying them is going to change. These independent contractors that you have, if they are integral to your business, which means that if they are generating revenue for your company or if they're core to the operation of your company, like, you need them to provide work so that you can provide products and services, then it is quite likely that you will have to reclassify those independent contractors as employees, which means you'll have to pay employer taxes and employee benefits, and they can unionize.
How is that different, Gene? Hasn't that been the case for some time?
No, there was a change to the rules. So there's always been this long list of requirements as to whether somebody's independent or not. Whether or not you exert control, whether they can negotiate fees, whether they can control their schedule, work independently, all that. And none of that is, a lot of that is mostly the same as it was. But these revised rules focused on this integral part.
So it was kind of implicit before that if someone was integral, that they should be an employee.
Yeah.
But now it's being spelled out and there's a definition for what integral means.
Right. Because it was implicit. It was things like, say you're a trucking firm and you've got a driver and it's an independent contractor. And even though he might work for you 10 hours a week or 20 hours a week and have other customers, that person was an independent contractor. They had their own business. They drive their truck. You give them a 1099 and that's what it was. Well, if you are on a trucking firm and this person is driving your products and then you're turning around and billing his services to your customer, that's integral now, and that's not implicit. That is now specific. And, the Department of Labor is saying, hey, that person should be an employee of yours. I mean, even if it's 10 hours a week.
Although I think one of the criticisms I read of this, and it may have been in your piece, is that what exactly is integral is a little bit vague, and that it's just not black and white and not something that someone can determine for themselves clearly whether an employee or a contractor is integral or not.
Yes and no. I mean, it kind of depends. I mean, listen, my company has really, got an issue with this. I mean, I hire a developer to do work for a client, and the guy charges me $50 an hour. I turn around and bill my client $100 an hour. That person is doing services for my client through me. He's generating revenue for me. I think that's pretty black and white that I would have to classify that person as an employee.
Do you have a plan? What are you going to do?
Yeah. Well, that's what I wrote about in the Washington Times. I said, first of all, let me just say, so that you don't go to jail, Loren. I don't want to put you in any liable situation here because you've got some maniac on the line talking about like some crazy. Because my position is you might want to ignore the rule if you're an employer, right? Now, first of all, talk to a labor attorney. Don't be brash. But there's a lot of reasons why. This rule might never ever see the light of day, even when it's issued in March. For starters, there's already lawsuits that are contesting it. There's going to be a number more that are going to contest it for things like you just mentioned about how do you determine integral and whether or not this is even under the purvey of the Department of Labor to do. Like, are they allowed to do something like this? And those lawsuits are going to continue on for the rest, throughout the year. And that kind of puts a stay on the regulation. There's another, you and I talked about this whole Chevron deference thing with the Supreme Court.
Yep.
We're going to get a ruling from the Supreme Court in the summer. And it looks like the Supreme Court is going to turn, a lot of these regulatory agencies, the sort of decisions that they make, let judges decide whether or not they're consistent with the legislation. This is the Fair Labor Standards Act. And so I imagine a bunch more lawsuits will come up contesting the Department of Labor's right to even do this, So there's that. And then there's an election. And, if a Republican gets, elected president, it'll be their Department of Labor. And, both Nikki Haley and Donald Trump have, opposed this and have supported, more flexibility for independent contractors, and would certainly not pursue any lawsuits, or defend any lawsuits against the government, and just let it lie. And therefore, the old rules will stay intact. So there's a lot of reason to think. And by the way, there's also, a fair number of congressmen on both sides of the aisle that are trying to convince the Department of Labor to exempt small businesses from this rule as well. So those conversations are going on. So you know what I mean? Like, all these things are happening that it's like, I don't know. Like, so in my situation, like, I'm probably going to play the lottery and wait and see how this all turns out before I start classifying people as employees, because it seems like it's kind of murky,
Well, I think it's likely that'll be a pretty easy decision to make, don't you think? I mean, if there is litigation, as you're describing, the rule's not going to go into effect. I mean, it might go into effect for a week, but right. If there's litigation, everything will be put on hold. Don't you think?
Okay, well, thank you, Loren, my attorney. I will take your advice. And when I'm locked up in prison, you'll be my first phone call. Okay, to bail me out.
We'll do dashboard with you in prison. That'll be interesting.
Yeah. You'll be like, yeah. Well, I guess I was wrong on that. Sorry, Gene.
Well, wait, I'm not telling you to ignore it. This was your idea.
Yeah, I hear you.
Let me ask you this: the point of this law is that there are employers who have taken advantage of workers by treating them as if they were employees, but not rewarding them, paying them, giving them benefits as if they were employees. Do you basically agree with that?
I do. I mean, I think there's two things that are going on here. One is the employees. The other is that, and again, I know, a lot of people accuse the Biden administration of want to help the unions. The more employees there are.
They don't accuse them of that. The Biden administration says they want to help employees.
Right. It's true. And part of that is to protect workers as well. But then again, one of the people that's one of the organizations that's suing the Department of Labor is the National Freelancers Association. Do you know what I mean? So, it's, you've got it from both sides. And I have a lot of independent contractors in my business, and they have no interest in being an employee of mine. They like their freedom, and they get health insurance through an association.
There's that gray area there where there are workers who are not being taken advantage of, who do like that the freedom to set their own schedule, determine their own hours, whatever it may be, and operate essentially as entrepreneurs. And I guess it's just hard to put that in language that will hold up in a court of law.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. It's just a different approach. It kind of like sums up the approach that different sides have to this. And again, I'm not saying either one is right or wrong, but it's like, the Democrats' approach is, there should be more regulation. The government should make more of these decisions to make it more clear. And then the Republicans, approach is, no, we're going to leave that up to business and their employees to figure out, what's best. And there's cases to make on both sides. I think which side I land on. So,
well, let me ask you this: suppose you do have to live with this rule as it is currently written. How big would that impact be if you had to make some of these?
Significant. I'll tell you who would be significantly affected. I don't think she would mind me saying, is my wife, who runs a nonprofit that provides literacy services. She gets funding. And then provides these certified tutors to teach kids how to read that couldn't otherwise be able to afford it on their own, which is amazing because it's, literacy is a huge, huge issue. And she uses contractors to do this. She's got about 50 or 60 independent contractors that are going out there and teaching these kids in the inner city in Philadelphia, helping them get up to grade level in reading, And if this rule came through and she had to comply with it, her expenses would significantly increase because she would then have to make them all eligible for their benefits, as well as pay workers' compensation, as well as pay employer taxes on all these people as a nonprofit, which basically means she will have less money available to provide services to help kids learn how to read. Do you see what I mean?
Sure.
My wife is very quickly turning from a Democrat into a Republican. These rules come out. So.
And you don't think there's any question, it's not a matter of it being a gray area. Those contractors that she uses would be integral to the business.
Yes. Oh, there's no doubt.
Yeah.
There's no doubt. They're integral. They are the core of the services that she provides. Is she sends them out there to teach these kids how to read. I mean, that's what her whole organization is about. You know what I mean?
And for your business, do you think, would you bring these people on as employees? Would that be?
Yeah,
would you,
sure. I would have to. Yeah, no, I would have to. And I would just have to raise my fees.
Interesting. All right. Next topic, more regulation. You wrote another piece about the EEOC and new guidelines that are coming.
It does make me laugh, these guidelines, because nobody seems to know this about the business world. So like this week I was in Scottsdale and I was in Cabo, Mexico. Now I was speaking to like a construction group in Scottsdale and then a group of trucking companies in Cabo, American trucking companies. And I'm talking about things that are going to impact them in 2024. And I start talking about this EEOC rule. And they are looking at me like, what the fuck are you telling us here? I mean, you should see the expression on their faces. This is a harassment, an update to harassment guidelines that date back to the 1965 Civil Rights Act. And the EEOC is going to be issuing these finalized rules this quarter. And they're targeting certain groups of employees, and they're making employers more responsible for not just their behavior, the employer's behavior, but other employees' behavior in their office or out of the office.
Like managers.
Yeah. Oh, no, anybody, like in or out of the office. It can be. So, for example, they address LGBTQ employees. If there is an LGBTQ employee who is feeling harassed or uncomfortable because that person is being intentionally, say, misgendered by another employee, which, come on, you and I know this shit happens. And nothing is done about it. Even if the employer is not aware of this, the employer could still be liable. If the employer doesn't provide a gender neutral bathroom, there is an LGBT, say there's a trans, employee there, who, identifies as a female and wants to use the female bathroom. And then there are other employees that don't feel comfortable with that. That's a hostile work environment. And the employer would be responsible under these new rules. I have more. The EEOC is saying, do not discuss in the workplace abortion. Like if you have pregnant or women that have given birth, there should be no conversation about contraception, right to life, women's right to choose. Just keep it out of the office, because that could make people feel uncomfortable and create a hostile.
Does it flat out say you can't talk about it, or is it the way you talk about it?
Yeah, flat out. I mean, you would have to look at the guidelines, which are like hundreds of pages. They're really long. And it gives a bunch of different examples. But my interpretation is, it's like if the conversation is taking place and an employee feels uncomfortable by this, it's creating a hostile work environment. That's when you've got that issue. One other that is, it addresses virtual things out of the office and in the office. So if this happens at a bar among employees, or if it happens on an online meeting, like you've got like a supplier. By the way, when I wrote about this for the Inquirer, I spoke to a couple of attorneys about this. So this is not me talking. You've got like a supplier on a Zoom call with some of your employees, and like, I don't know, the supplier has like Mein Kampf on a bookshelf behind him. Do you know what I mean? And that makes the employees feel uncomfortable, and you're not even aware of this, but they can report that this is a hostile work environment. This is true. This is all stuff that we're now subject to. All
right. So a couple of things. Number one, are you planning on ignoring these rules too, Gene?
I'm going to double down, baby. Right? I'm going to put that on my employment application. Do you support abortion or not? Right? Make those decisions that way. So no, I mean, you have to be. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Which is what I'm advising all the people that were looking at me with these incredulous looks, these truckers. First of all, you got to talk to a labor attorney. And let's all agree that we all picked the wrong profession. You should not have gone into journalism, Loren. You're a smart guy. You should have been a labor attorney. You would be living in a much bigger house and probably not doing this. You'd be much more financially well off. But okay. So you need to talk to a labor attorney, and you need to make sure that your your policies, like my HR policies, are completely updated to be in accordance with these new rules, zero tolerance. So you got to be on record of that. That's number one. Number two, you need to have a system of reporting. Now, I've got a very small company, so I'll communicate to everybody that if any of this stuff is going on, if you're not comfortable, my system of reporting is you need to tell me right away. I need to know. Now, obviously, if you're a bigger company, it might be a little bit more layered, where you go to HR or to your manager or whatever, but you need to have a better system of reporting. Because remember, the EEOC, you can report now violations directly to the EEOC. And then like the next thing you know, you're getting a call from Washington. So you need to be able to grab that before it happens. And finally, some states require training. Depending on the size of your organization, you really might want to consider training for your employees as well. Those are the things you need to do to mitigate this.
All right. So forgive me, but I suspect that you're spinning this just a little bit to make it sound as bad as you possibly can, perhaps for the entertainment value. A couple of things I want to ask you about. One is you seem bothered with the notion that this applies whether it happens, the harassment, in an office or somewhere else. And my question to you is, what if it's a manager and a subordinate and there's harassment? Why wouldn't that matter if it happens somewhere else, especially if it's a company outing or something? But even if it's not,
yeah, I'm bothered by this entire rule. I just want to
I sense
I'm
that.
bothered by the entire thing. I think that it is. We were just talking before about the independent contractors and who's impacted. I mean, I believe this is such a tiny, tiny part of the of the workforce that are impacted by this. Such a tiny, tiny part that I kind of feel like, why are we wasting the time of the EEOC and employers and an industry of attorneys that are going to argue against this?
It covers a broad range of harassment for all sorts of reasons. I'm not sure it's as tiny. I mean, you could pick any individual group and say it's small, but
which brings me to my next point. Because it identifies a broad range of harassment, it opens up so many opportunities for a disgruntled employee to make some kind of a claim. It like basically gives them an open book to do that, which then puts the employer at that much more of a disadvantage.
All right, let me stop you because I think you're still making this sound as bad as you possibly can make it. There's clearly some truth to what you're saying, especially just now about the possibility of a disgruntled employee taking advantage of this. But, you gave the example before of a supplier. It's not somebody that an employer controls. It's a supplier who's on a Zoom call and has an offensive book on a bookcase. I don't think the business owner is going to lose his or her business because of one Zoom call. And if there is a report about this, I mean, if you were that owner and it was your supplier in that Zoom call with Mein Kampf on the bookshelf, you'd probably want to know that and you'd probably do something about it. Am I right?
Exactly. No, you're absolutely right. Which is, by the way, that's the kind of thing that should be part of your reporting procedures. Anything that makes you feel hostile, like creates that kind of an environment. And definitely, I mean, 99.9% of my clients that I know that are employers, if they heard of such situations, like, wait, let me get this straight. You want to call with some guy and he's got this book behind him? Like, I get that. Let me talk to the supplier and make sure that doesn't happen again. So yeah, of course, which is why
I haven't heard you say anything that suggests to me that something terrible is going to happen to the business owner unless this is reported and ignored.
Like it's fine unless they go do something about it. Sure. But I guess it still gets back to, again, why do we have, so now an employer has to take action. I mean, any employer that I know, any normal employee, they hear something like this, it's up to, they'll take the action. It's their business. So if they think that this is something that is, going to create a hostile work environment and they're looking out for their employees. And let me tell you something, in 3.7% unemployment with 9 million unfilled jobs right now, we value our employees very much and we want to make sure that they're happy and that we have got their backs. If I heard that any of my employees on a call are being in any way teased or bullied or, constantly misgendered when they're, when they insist on being, I can't even imagine not even saying like, stop doing this. Everybody behave and just do your fucking work. You know what I mean?
I can't imagine you allowing that to happen either, but I know there are plenty of employers where it has gone on.
I don't know about plenty. It gets back to my original argument that, are there plenty of employers where this is going on? Is this really like, a crisis at the level that we have the EEOC spending time creating this giant book of guidelines?
I think you and I are fortunate enough not to have been subjected to this or to have observed it all that often, if ever, in our careers. But I suspect it does go on more than you'd like to think.
I keep getting back to the point that, and this gets back to other issues that are in HR. I mean, it is still an employee's world. There are still many choices for an employee to go out and work. Most employers should be treating employees well. And, it's a demand and supply thing, and it's going to be going on forever. If you're working for a jerk, if you, and people aren't, responding and you're feeling uncomfortable or you're in a hostile work environment, then leave. I mean, I think there's plenty of other choices.
That's sometimes easier said than done. I understand that the labor market has gotten a lot better for labor of late, but still, someone shouldn't have to do that, especially depending on what type of harassment it is.
I think I really do believe that this stuff is over the top. I really do. And by the way, I know I'm not alone, and I know that,
of course not.
You're going to find a lot of business groups saying this is just crazy.
You know what's missing here, Gene? You've told, not on your part, but you've told us what the new guidelines are, and you've given your advice about talking to a labor attorney and making sure that you have clear rules and all that. It's not clear to me what happens if you fail to do that properly.
You get fined by the EEOC.
Well, but
you get
for what exactly? How far do you have to go? I mean, I'm not sure you know the answer to these questions, but how egregious does the situation have to be? How big are the fines? What are the stakes here? That's a piece of this that I think would be important to know.
First of all, yeah, it's a relevant question to ask, but also just bear in mind that even like an IRS audit, the minute that the EEOC hears of something like this and then starts investigating, now you're spending time defending yourself. Now it's an issue that your other employees are aware of, and depending on where you are in in your community, I mean, it's a potential issue that other people in your community start becoming aware of as well, even if you're completely innocent. And it's just extra headaches that I don't think a business owner needs.
Fair enough. Lastly, let's talk about something I think we both agree on. There's a very interesting family business story in Philadelphia of late, and I'm wondering if you could explain this to me. There's kind of a cheesesteak empire in Philadelphia known as Tony Luke's. Family-owned business where there were, in preceding years, there was a split in the business. The father, two sons, one son goes off and franchises, I think under the same name, which is awkward to begin with. Litigation follows. In that litigation, it is revealed that the father and the son who stayed with the father have been engaging in tax fraud worth millions and millions of dollars, and they are now on their way to prison. Why do these things only happen in Philadelphia?
It does seem that way, doesn't it? Chicky and Pete's also was a big Philly restaurant, right? They got in trouble for wage theft.
Yeah, that's kind of what I know. It doesn't only happen in Philadelphia, but it seems like it happens there more.
Yeah, I really think there's something in the water that we grow more numpties than other places in the country, And these people are numpties. First of all, I'm not even a fan of Tony Luke's. They do have some outlets in the Philly airport, and I think they're average at best. Although I do hear their pork sandwich is very, very good. So their roast pork sandwich. So that's fine. But these guys are like, so they commit this tax fraud. They pay employees under the table.
It was a very complicated scheme. They went way out of their way.
Yeah, to fraud the government. And as if, and like any other scheme, of course it's going to be found out because you're involving so many people. Do you know what I'm saying? I remember, did I ever tell you this story? I was listening to like a podcast, and this guy was talking to like this retired police homicide investigator, and he was saying like, I want to commit the perfect murder. So what do you think of this plan? And then the guy was like, so I'm going to do this, and I'm going to get a buddy of mine to do that. And then the police, investigator was like, okay, well, you're going to be caught. Because the minute you involve another person, ultimately you're going to get caught because somebody came. And like Tony Leaks, there's such a bunch of numpties that they have this elaborate scheme to defraud the government by paying employees under the table. And that was only one part of it. And then not paying any taxes related to it. For God's sake, you've got this brand that's in the Philadelphia airport and other places around this city. It's so well known. It's not like you're like the Gene Marks cheesesteak shop that nobody gives a shit about. You do this stuff and like it's crazy. And you know what's also crazy about it, Loren, which it gets back to a lot of other things that people don't realize when they have extra costs. I mean, Tony Luke's charges, I don't know, $10 for a cheesesteak. Maybe that's the going rate for a cheesesteak.
I think it's a little more.
Okay, say it's $12. Make it $12.50
and pay the tax
and pay the taxes. You know what I mean? Like, all the stuff that you're saving, all the money that you're getting away with, you can so easily pass this down to your customers, and then make sure you're doing it the right way. Otherwise, this is what happens. And then you've got two jokers, you and me, talking about it on a podcast. So it's just crazy. It's crazy.
Well, here's what we really agree on. I think people make a mistake. I think the cheesesteak is not the best Philadelphia sandwich.
And you think it's what, roast pork?
I do. Pork with provolone and broccoli rabe. That is what Philadelphia should be famous for.
Yeah, I hear you. Definitely not scrapple either, by the way. The cheesesteak, and also because I'm at an age right now where like eating a cheesesteak is probably just not the best thing to do for a guy in his 50s.
I'm not sure it's good for anybody at any age, but all right. What are you working on, Gene? Anything we should be looking for this week?
Yeah, actually, I do have an aggressive schedule for this week. So, you know what I'm going to write about for The Guardian? And literally, The Guardian, my editor said that he's got to talk to his legal team to get it clear. Loren, I spent $50 on Twitter the other week to promote, like I have a new book out on CRM. And I said, okay, I'm going to have a promoted tweet for $50 with a URL in the tweet, taking him to my landing page to download the book. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And $50, I figured I'd give it a shot. I get the report in from Twitter, 80 billion impressions, whatever that means. You know what I mean? And then it says I had over 400 clicks on my link. Twitter told me clicks. And remember, Twitter's eating up my budget based on the clicks, right? I go to my landing page. There's 10 views on my landing page. And yet Twitter told me there were 400 clicks to it. And I'm writing about that this week. Wow. You're taking on, you're the biggest Elon Musk fanboy I know, and you're going to take him on? I love Elon. I'm not picking on Elon Musk per se. I'm picking on, this is an overall online. By the way, it's called X, Gene. Yeah, it's X. Sorry. It's X, and it's even Google Ads. And then you're going to tell me, I know people are like, oh, well, there are a lot of bots. You're probably just getting clicked on bots. I'm like, okay, so what? That's my problem. I just gave X $50, and you're telling me 400 bots clicked on it. So what is that? How does that make it better? Why is that? Yeah, how does that make it any better? So I think it is just a scam, and I am going to write about that it is a scam, and so you can look for that. Let's talk about it again next week. How does that sound? I look forward to that. Now I can't wait to read it and to talk about it. Gene Marks is a CPA who writes weekly on small business for The Guardian, The Hill, The Philadelphia Inquirer, The Washington Times, The Chicago Daily Herald, Forbes, and Entrepreneur. You can also hear on ABC Radio's Eye on the World with John Batchelor. Gene hosts 2 small business podcasts with Paychex Corporation and The Hartford. This episode was brought to you by The Great Game of Business, which helps businesses use an open book management system to help build healthier companies. You can learn more at greatgame.com. Thank you, Gene. Thank you, Loren. Have a great week, everybody.